Hey guys, NJ here, just doing a follow-up now on this Leader 120 and where we've ended up. Now there has been quite a lot of modification that I've done here, but it really was in pursuit of me finding this kind of perfect little micro for me and the way I fly. So one thing I did decide to experiment with, I had a little chat with my buddy Albert Kim. Definitely go check his channel out if you don't already. I'm sure lots of you know who he is. Really nice guy, does great reviews. He did mention to me, because he does a lot with the micro stuff, these Rotor X, and now these are 2.5 inch these, as opposed to the Gem fans I was running, which were the 2-inch. Here's a particularly bashed up one that I've got here. I really like the performance of these props on pretty much every micro. They work great, but I wanted to see if I could get away with something with a little bit more blade length, a little bit more punch, but still that nice polite blade angle, 35 instead of a 45 or a 50, which should just be way too much for these 1104s. So I tried these out, 2.5 by 35 by Rotor X, and they're these props are very similar. I think they're almost identical material, so they bend back really easily, and they're also, these ones actually come in 2 parts, so you kind of assemble them and then bolt them down, which is kind of cool, because if you break one blade here, it's not game over. You can just put another half back in to make them up. So they're a little tricky to find, but I've been really impressed with the performance. You can see they're just a little bit longer, but very similar profile and same pitch. These have been great in terms of punch out, provided you've got a nice strong battery. These have been awesome. I mean, these are punching out like, I suppose the equivalence I could give you would be like a 5S on a 5-inch quad. It's that kind of crazy power, and I've got some great flight footage at the end to show you exactly how they perform. I did manage to shoehorn in this Runcam Micro Swift 2. Now, the only downside really was the fact that it didn't quite fit in terms of width, so what I actually had to do was just add a spacer here. You can see I've just added a plastic washer just to give a tiny bit more width here, but because this is the only single brace at the top here, and structurally that's fine, it's rigid as hell, it just gave me enough room to get this guy in. Now, in terms of how it's wedged, it's kind of wedged between this TPU lower brace across the bottom here, and it's wedged at the top. It's actually this riptie here that's kind of adding compression at the top, and then the maximum angle you can get out of it is this, which is about 30 degrees, I'd say 25 to 30. It's on a nice 2.1mm lens, so there's absolutely no problem with flying that. As soon as I tilt forward for speed, you've got so much vertical field of view, it really doesn't matter. It's actually working great at this angle, and you can see it kind of backs out pretty much against this where I've put this VTX, so there's nothing really too much you can do about that. But as I said, with that 2.1 lens, that's absolutely fine. I can see the ground when it's flat for landing, and I can also get to a really heavy forward tilt and still not have a problem. So if you're racing, that might be more of an issue. For me, for freestyle, this just, you know, more luck than judgment, has happened to work out really well. So that's how I shoehorn that in. I then put the XM Plus on top here and just zip tied that with a little bit of cushioning underneath to this VTX board that I have sitting on top the flight controller, and then you can see I've got a linear antenna just poking out the back. I had to move the buzzer just back a little bit just to get that here, again just soft mounted and stuck down on top of the back TPU cross brace here, that TPU standoff, and also a little bit of foam just sticking it to the lower part of that PDB ESC underneath. But yeah, all in all, that is all shoehorned in nicely. It's all well protected all the way around, which is good. It feels really solid. And in terms of weight, it's coming in, I think it was around 73, 74 grams flying weight, about 74 grams I think. So a tiny bit heavier than the Lizard, but stronger motors, a much better camera, as you'll see from the flight footage, and all in all, I'm super impressed with the performance. In terms of the batteries I've now tested, so I've tested the stock, this is the eSheen battery. There's got another one over here so you can just see what that is. It's a 550 40C 11.1. That's a really nice kind of balanced battery. It's not the strongest battery, but it performs really well on that. The other battery that I tried out, now this guy, this is quite, you can see it's quite a bit chunkier, this guy. This is the XF Power, so you can get these by Bandicoot. I'll put a link in the description to all of these. This is a 550 milliamp 70C. Now, obviously cell density's higher, so it's heavier and a bit bulkier than this guy, but it really does hold voltage and it's great. This is probably my favourite battery. The only downside is, me and a friend actually bought 5 of these. I took 3, he took a couple. One of his was good and one of mine were good. So 2 out of the 5 had good low internal resistance and worked well. The other 3, I think one of them was here actually, this one, the internal resistance was absolutely astronomical. It was, yeah, completely unflyable. As soon as you flew it, it didn't want to know, it would just sag immediately to low voltage, and also if you charged it, it would take forever to charge because the internal resistance on these cells was so terrible. So I can't really recommend these, but what I can recommend as an alternative, which is the other one I've tried out, is the Turnigy Nanotech. Now this is 450 milliamp. I did actually want to get 550 milliamp, but 450s I thought would be interesting to check out and see how they did. These actually did really well. They claim to be 60 to 130 C, which is pretty damn strong. But I've had mixed results with Nanotechs before, but these ones have actually been great. They definitely held up. They're considerably lighter than this guy and really did hold the voltage. So I can actually say the 450 3S has actually been great. So 450, 550 in the Nanotech, that's quite a strong recommendation. Very, very happy with the performance of that. But all in all, I've been really happy with this, so I can strongly recommend the Leader 120, even if it in its stock form with the stock camera, which is this guy. It's still not a bad camera. It's certainly one of the better CMOS I've seen. But if you do want to shoehorn in a micro Swift, this is the Micro Swift 2, then you certainly can. That's something else that you might have noticed here. I actually had to file this down to be flat so that it would fit under this, you can see where this ridge was going to catch it. If you didn't do that, this whole thing would sit slightly wonky. So I had to file a little bit of plastic down there and also a little bit of plastic down on the underside in the same place, just to make sure this sat nice and square. So a little bit of fiddling and modification, some different props. But I'm really, really happy with the results. This is now a super capable micro that I will definitely be flying an awful lot. It leaves a big smile on my face. One other thing I really wanted to point out in this, Greg over at Menace RC, you'll know I'm a big fan of Menace RC and their antennas, especially their Invader patch. I love that to bits. Greg sent me this, which is the Bandicoot. Now, I wanted a little bit of time to test this and really get a feel for it, but this guy is basically designed to claw back that sort of 3 dB of gain that you lose with using a circular polarized patch on a linear antenna. So if you're flying a linear antenna, which most of us will be, or you should be certainly, because it keeps things very light and considerably more robust on a micro, it's an absolute must, I think, to be using something like this. Well, I mean, I haven't seen many other linear patches out there. I mean, Greg's obviously worked very hard to get this guy developed and working, but I definitely noticed the difference when I switched over to this. And you'll see from the footage, although I don't go miles away by any account, you can still see there is hardly any breakup. The picture's just solid. You completely forget that you're on linear, and that to me is probably the biggest thing that I notice. So yeah, Greg's done it again. Fantastic, cheap price as well. I'll put some links in the description to this guy, but yeah, huge fan of this Bandicoot.